In this website builder prototype I've been playing around with, there is a feature I added which allows the user to download all of their assets zipped up. And I wanted to demo that to you all and kind of walk you through the code in case you need to achieve something similar in your own projects. And I'll kind of tell you what NPM packages I used. This will be a short video, probably like 5 or 10 minutes. So let's just kind of dive into it. And hopefully you guys learn something new. So down here, I got an export button. You click it. It doesn't work because you have to be a premium user. Let's actually go to my code and just try to find that. I think it's called like has active subscription. And then I can go here. And honestly, I'll just say return true here. Whatever. Go ahead and just comment this stuff out. Look at that. I don't need the vibe code. I can add features the old fashioned way. All right, let's try this out now. I'm going to click on this download button and it's going to kick off an endpoint. And look at that. I got a zip file. And if I were to open that, you'll see that we have all the files that are associated with my project. So we got an index file, we got a styles.css, and we got a components directory with the header and the footer. These are both web components. So this is pretty cool. A user can actually grab these and they could like FTP this over to like their favorite website hosting service, or they could go and drop this into their own code editor, mess around with the code. And I wanted to walk you through how that code kind of works in case you are curious. So when they click on that button, it calls a handle and download zip. If they don't have an active subscription, it shows like a modal, which you guys saw. I don't think I need to walk you through some modal code. That'd be kind of boring. And then I set a loader so that we know if the downloading is happening or not. That just shows a spinner in the button. But the important part is right here. So we are going to try to invoke a convex action. Basically, it's just like a backend endpoint, right? And you'll see here, I'm trying to click on this download project zip, which takes in a project ID. And the first thing I do is do a couple of validation checks, right? I need to make sure that the person has an active subscription. Otherwise, I'm going to paywall this feature. I don't want people to do this unless they're actually subscribed with an active Stripe subscription. I should probably also add some type of authorization checks to make sure that the user making the request has access to this project ID. There's a lot of stuff I need to fix before I even think about going live with this, but that's how that kind of works for right now. Let's move on. So basically we get all the pages that exist in this person's project. So if I show you the schema, we have a projects table, and then we also have a pages table. So every project is composed of multiple pages, and every page has a version to it, right? After they refine pages, we can keep track of what version and what file of that page they were doing at the time. And so the key here is this page file ID. This is what's pointing to a convex storage location, which has like the HTML file or has like the CSS file or the web component file that you saw in that zip earlier, right? So we basically get all the pages, and then for every single one, we pull back all the files and we push them into a files array. So again, all we're doing is pushing in the path, which I think is used for showing right here. We're showing the paths here in the name. So this is the path, and then we have a file ID. And then after we kind of push those all into an array, we can create something called a zip stream. And then we also create a pass through. So if you look at the top, I think these are both kind of imported up here. And by the way, zip stream is the NPM package that's kind of relevant to the video I'm talking about right now. So let's go to NPM zip stream. This is what I'm using right now. So basically, everything I'm talking about in this video, if you want to try to replicate it in your own project, check out Zipstream. It seems like it's a pretty good library for Node, where you basically can just like zip stuff together and send it back. Anyway, let's move forward. So you make the archive, which is the Zipstream, and then you pipe this pass through to it. And then later, I think you can kind of like start pushing more things to it. So down here, you'll see that we call add files, which is going to loop over all the files in that array. And then we fetch back the file from Convex's blob storage, which I think I could probably do a promise all here to make this a little bit faster. So I'm going to put a little to do, promise all this thing. I'll do that in a little bit. But once we get the file, we basically convert it to a buffer. And then we want to say archive entry. We put the buffer, we give it a name. And then when it's done, we can just call resolve. Now we wrap this whole thing in a promise because I guess archive.entry doesn't have a promise version, which is that kind of sucks. But I guess, you know, knowing how to use a callback and wrap it in a promise is very useful. So I guess if you haven't seen that before, that's how that kind of happens. And then eventually when all these things are done, we call archive.finish. So that's kind of finalizing the zip. I'll be honest, I don't know how zip works under the hood. Like I'm guessing it just puts a bunch of files inside of a giant like array of like binary data, and then it probably has like a header that describes where the files start and their names and whatnot. I could probably just ask GPT how it works, but I'm lazy. So let's move forward. So after all the files have been adding to this archive thing, it looks like what we do is we then concatenate a bunch of chunks. So I think as we're like adding files and then we finalize it, it's piping information to this pass-through object. You'll see here archive.pipe to pass-through, and down here we are basically looping over all the chunks of the pass-through, and then we're putting it inside of a giant buffer here. Okay, so eventually we'll have an entire binary array or buffer that contains the zip file, which I then store into convex storage, right? So I just go ahead and say like convex storage.store. I pass it the blob of the zip buffer. I give it a type of application zip, and then I generate a URL, and that URL is what I send back to the user. Now, one thing I want to point out with convex is that you can quickly spin off like a, run this later type of thing. This is a scheduler, and I say after 10 minutes, go ahead and just delete this file, because I'm assuming this is like an ephemeral zip file that I don't want to keep stored forever in my storage, because storing stuff costs money. And if it's not something you want to keep around forever, you should probably clean it up. So basically I schedule a delete zip file to run after some time, which is down here, and it basically just deletes the file from my storage, right? It's like, imagine you have an S3 bucket, it just automatically cleans up. So this is something that I love about convex. Like, it's so easy to just spin some random thing off and say, hey, in 10 minutes, clean up that file. But eventually we send back the file ID and the URL. And this is the important part, because when we send back the URL, I do believe, if I go back to, where are we actually doing this? Somewhere we get back the URL. All right, here we go. We create an A element, we set it to the URL, and then we basically do this hacky stuff to click it, which will start a file download in the browser. Now, I do think that this can have potential problems like on different browsers and on mobile. So I think I'm gonna actually have to have an HTTP endpoint probably serve back this file instead of like sending the whole blob/binary data over. But I'll put it to do here. Maybe this would be better from a HTTP endpoint with a content disposition. All right. But this kind of approach gets the job done for like a nitty gritty. But I do have a lot of web dev experience. So when I see a solution like this, I know there's limitations, right? There's limitations with mobile browsers and various other things where like stuff gets blocked. Sometimes your browser will actually block this type of thing on like your iPhone, I do believe. So I'll have to go and check that up. So again, just add a little to do. I'll come back later. But yeah, that's kind of how it works. Now, another thing that's kind of concerning is the performance of this. Again, like we should probably have a promise all here. And then this as well is kind of concerning, right? We basically take that zip file and then we chunk it up into memory. So this could potentially be an attack vector. Chunking everything into a giant buffer might be an attack vector, where someone could basically use up all the memory on whatever's running this code and then cause it to crash. But honestly, this runs in a serverless runner, so they're just going to bring it down for themselves, and that's about it. So I don't know if it's that big of an issue, but again, as I'm kind of reading through the code, I like to just put little comments so that I can kind of review them and fix them later on. But yeah, I guess you guys could leave a comment as well if you think this would be an issue. Imagine this is like a Lambda function, right? So it's going to run in isolation. And even if someone has like a giant zip and they want to push thousands of files into a zip, yeah, they may break that one Lambda request, but it's not going to affect other people. Anyway, that's kind of how it works. Go check out the zip stream package. I do believe we use this at work as well, where we have to basically aggregate a bunch of PDFs and put them into a single zip, and then we store that zip in the S3. So very useful, and it's very performant. I've seen this work very well on our production applications. So check out this package if you need it. All right, hope you guys enjoyed. Leave a comment below. Have a good day and happy coding.